really just the brains behind so much of the evidence-based science that we have. And it was honestly the perfect marriage. We were taking evidence-based science together with, direct services and programs. So it was really a wonderful merger for us. And there was a time where, especially during the first year of the merger, what do we do, right? Because we do so much as a merged company, right? We do research, prevention, policy, and everything. So we landed on serving families, but that doesn't mean that the other work went away, right? Whether it's research, health care disparities, criminal justice, regardless, we're just going to serve it up through a family lens. So a little bit about me. I started volunteering at the partnership, I want to say, oh my goodness, maybe 2011. And how I found them is I'm just really struggling, having every door that I tried to enter was closed. Our family was denied any kind of insurance through our private insurance for 6 years, and just was at our wit's end. So Google was my support system. So I began, I remember the day exactly, I reached out to maybe 102. It is definitely 102 people just begging for help. And the partnership was the only organization that answered me and that understood my journey and why I began volunteering with them for the next 6 years. And then I did begin working with them, and I am the director of family support and advocacy. But more importantly, which touches my heart, is I'm just a voice for all of you at the organization. I get to plant seeds on the family voice, whether it's marketing and communications or content or the services that we provide. So I'm so grateful to represent the hundreds of thousands of families that come to visit us every day and have that voice front and center. So a little bit about us: we empower families, and we'll go through the slides with our resources, direct programs. We advance effective care through our evidence-based research and work that we do. We shape public policy. I'll get to the advocacy sides, but that is done primarily through sharing our stories together with our policy team, which is the depth of it. I will speak to when we get to those slides. And we really change culture. I think we all know that stigma is the root of so much that we face every day. So we're just trying to change that and change the messaging, and through our programs and content, really change the narrative on addiction. For far too long, families were told that they were part of the problem, when in fact we know from the science and our work that we can be part of the solution. I so wanted to share this video with you, but we had some technical problems. We just rolled out our new brand launch, and this was a video with Addiction Starts with Connection. And we're so grateful that the Lumineers joined us on this. So I think we're going to send this link after, but really, really important, because too often we're told to let go, let our kids hit rock bottom, that we're part of the problem. And this video really illustrates that through connection, we can really make some big strides with our loved ones and with our whole family unit in general. So Kathy or Donna will share that thereafter. And this is not working for some reason, so I might just go to my regular slides, even though they're in the thumbnail, so just to make it easier. Part of the work that we do requires us to collaborate and work with partners. I think, I know, having been advocating for quality treatment and changing the narrative and reducing stigma, that's so often in our field, we work in silos, and we have an agenda, and our constituents deserve better than that. Instead of recreating the wheel, we truly adhere to partnering with others. So we work with providers, schools and communities through many of our collaborations. One of them is Heron Talks and our work with them, our research and policymakers. So we are a big believer in partnering. We do not want to recreate the wheel. When I think of an example of that is we've created an anti-racism task force, and we know where our sweet spots are. We know that we can speak to healthcare disparities and criminal justice, but it's not, there's other areas where it's not our sweet spot, right? So we want to form collaborations and highlight the great work out there. That's one example. Another example could be the work that we do with some of our competitors, let's say Shatterproof, which is primarily working on the treatment system, right? Instead of recreating that wheel, we want to collaborate with them. So again, that's really, really important for us, and we know we can't do this alone. With the speaker series and having looked at the different areas, so Courtney spoke last week on advocacy, which I'll hit upon a little bit. I thought that our goal was, our program serving families. So while we do a whole lot more, and I can share that with you with any questions, I'm going to really concentrate on families today. So I'm sorry about the thumbnails, you guys. For some reason, I can't advance. So parents have so many questions. And when I say parents, that means any caregiver. That means grandparents. That means aunts. That means uncles. That could be someone in foster care. We began so many of our programs with parents. For example, and I'll speak to this later, we have 350 trained peer coaches. It began with parents, right? So we're rethinking how we name this, but I just wanted everybody throughout the presentation to understand that parents means caregivers, family members, everybody, and even people in recovery. They have been working with us quite a bit lately, whether it be through coaching or advocacy. We know with the recovery community for so long, we too have been working in silos, but we're so lockstep on the advocacy efforts and what we want for our constituents. So this is just an example of the questions that we hear from parents and families and caregivers. So we're here to help. So I'm going to go over a couple of our services. Kathy and I spoke a little bit, and if it seems like I'm rushing through the slides, I love Q&A, right? I'm not that person that self-promotes or says, look at us, but I think it's really important that we talk about the services that we have and leave it open for Q&A. So I'm sorry if I'm rushing through these, but I just love to hear back from you, specific questions, and we can revisit one of these slides, but again, I just wanted to open it up for Q&A. So these are some of the services that we offer now. We have the helpline. We have over 1,500 families reach out to us each month, approximately. They come to us in many different pathways, right? So we're aware that, parents are typically really in tune with social media. We understand that maybe grandparents, a different generation, are not comfortable with social media, so they reach out to us via email. We've learned that the Latino community in Spanish are really Facebook oriented. So through the years, we were able to see how many different pathways people come to us, right? When somebody calls the helpline, that is such a courageous step. It's the first time that someone really admits like this problem is bigger than us, right? But we also realize that that's a really courageous step. If I look at my own journey, I probably hung up on that helpline like 10 times. Like I was inspired to call it, but then, oh my God, am I going to be shamed or judged, or am I going to be judged on my moral failings, right? So we knew that we had to come through many different pathways. So to get to our helpline, we have texting, we have messaging from Facebook, again, where I would say 80% of our Latino community comes in. We have emails. There's many different ways you can get to us. And that's kind of like the first stop that families hit, right? And they hit our support specialists and they are addiction master specialists. They are social workers. So many families reaching out to the helpline. That's their first stop, the first time that they're really being heard and not judged. Also, the first time that we're hearing the families want to speak to families at the same time. So they really understand the need for the helpline. But I can tell you, and we'll talk little bit when we get to parent coaching, it's when they get to us peers who've been on the journey that those dams really open up and we hear the whole story. So that's the helpline, and feel free to ask any questions there. And then there's the site, which is not only the services that I'm going to talk about here, but the meat of resources for families. And that could be navigating the treatment system, navigating the denial of treatment period, and what does that look like, and how do we appeal that process? So many of our families don't know that it's the law that they cover us, right? So we kind of educate our families through our content on all the different areas. And that, again, includes navigating the treatment system, the parity system, harm reduction. What does that look like? So the resources of our family. And then we have Help and Hope by Text, which I'll share for you personally. I think so often, because I get the text messages, what if I had this tool? I think of the nights, the very long nights, 5 and 6 hours, checking on our son, who, by the way, was denied any kind of treatment, right? So at that point, not only were we the family looking for resources, but also putting on many different hats, whether it be that advocacy help and advocating for their health care, or just learning. I think of Help and Hope by Text and just saying it's a lifeline. Not only does it help our families not feel so alone, but it begins that education process, and it's in our hand anytime we need it. And it not only shares the resources that we have, but often will share the other resources that we have, whether it's from the helpline to coaching and so forth. So just an amazing, amazing platform. The text messages are tailored to your unique experience. So often in this field, it's a one size fits all. And we're told, I think of the time, the first support group meeting and 40 families there, and 40 unique families, very different children, very different dynamics. And we're all told to, kind of let go and go to Al-Anon. And I remember sitting there, and I share my personal experiences only because part of my role or job at the partnership is being a voice for you. And I hear it time and time again, like, how do you serve up that black and white advice that we never would do in any other medical condition? So just this text messaging platform is just amazing and really a lifeline. And Kathy, I think at the end of this, I'll send links to all you guys, but just amazing. So it goes through a small assessment to where maybe you are on the touch point in that journey. Is it early use? Is it early recovery? Are you still struggling? Where are you on that touch point? Is your loved one willing or engaged into maybe considering treatment? So I encourage all of you to learn more about our Help and Hope. And our e-learning, we have modules out there. This particular resource is pretty wonderful. It's a time when you think your child might be experimenting, or maybe they're in their early teens. Just a wonderful learning module to really dive deep into substance use and what it looks like, and maybe what that first day looks like, and what are the signs and symptoms. I know for me, I can remember our son on that early touch point. If you think about that journey, right? He was so happy, thinking he could conquer the world. And what do we feel as family members that when we see our loved ones or our child so happy and inspired and willing to take on that world? It's like our dream for our kids to be happy. Little did I know what that first day of addiction looked like, right? That euphoria. I just didn't understand it. And so often, whether it be in our prevention classes or discussions, we talk about that last day. We talk about the spiral. So we don't see that first day and what it looks like. And I've had so many families reach out to me and say, that have lost their families, God bless them, saying like, Johnny was so happy. It was the first time he was really engaging in our family and talking and communicating and feeling inspired. And while as parents, we all, think that those are wonderful signs. Too often it's the first sign of that early touch point, right? Where they might be using substances. So I could go on and on about that. And Kathy, for some reason, I can't see the rest of let me try to move this over. Perfect. I couldn't see the rest of our services. Peer parent coaching, I am so grateful. Kathy mentioned so many of you on this call. And when I say so many, even one is enough, right? So when we have 4, peer coaches on this, it just fills my heart. I'm going to delve a little bit into this more, and I hope you have some questions, but this is really our sweet spot. I would say it was about 6 years ago, our founder, I'm going to get through this without choking up, who we just lost, just came up with this idea, like, what if we can serve families a solution-based model, right? So it doesn't mean that the Al-Anons and the family support services and all the different 12 steps don't work. There's no one size fits all as we support our loved ones in recovery. But, what if we offer them a solution-based model? And oftentimes this model can complement the Al-Anon. When I think of Al-Anon, in my opinion, doesn't mean it's the right or wrong of it, really helpful for me to get out, to have a safe place to share, to be among others, where the first time I didn't feel so alone. But when I think about the solution-based, I think of 2 things. I think of being told that I was part of the problem time and time and time again. I think of my other son who has serious medical conditions and was in the hospital the first 5 years of his life, and I never gave up on him. And I think, like, I have to be part of the solution, right? Not only do I know that I can't give up hope, but I also know being denied any kind of treatment and being stigmatized and judged, that I needed a toolbox. I needed a toolbox to say, I can be part of the solution. And that's when we came up with our peer parent coaching program. It began approximately 7 years ago. I think Lori is on here. She was part of that pilot program. And then I followed. I think there was 10 of us. And today we have trained over 350 coaches across the country. And while we speak to CCAR, which is lovely with the recovery peer coaches and recovery specialists, it's that same model. There's nothing like peer support. And again, back to what I was talking about before, so many of the families calling into the helpline said, I want to speak to another family member. They really understand me. This peer parent coaching, and again, parent, please remember, it's recovery, grandparents. I mean, I can't tell you the mix of people that we have coming into this program was intended to just have that same similar solution-based model, but is turned into something just really wonderful. And the waterfall effects of just the peer support amongst our family of coaches. And then I often think of the families that have lost someone, who feel they're not worthy enough to come to our program. Not only do they feel better, better is not the right word. Not only do they feel that they are part of our family, but it's been such a tremendous part of their healing. Because the message again and again is, we did the best with what we had, which was pretty much zero. Again, Google was our support system. The treatment programs don't offer family support programs. Some of that's because there's no funding stream, but part of it is because they just don't know that there's other options, right? So I hope you have lots of questions there. It is a model based on CRAFT, which is community reinforcement family training, motivational interviewing, and ACT, which is acceptance training. So I hope you have some questions there, especially from some of them that we're coaching. I will say, as devastating as this pandemic has been, and we see it through our helpline, everything's just been exasperated. It's just, it's really sad. Families are not only traveling the same journey, but they're stuck inside a 700 square foot, apartment, the depression, the anxiety. I think the silver lining has been that the way we could scale this out during the pandemic, we did these trainings in person, which will never go away. There's nothing like doing in-person training, but we've trained 40 coaches in the last month. We have 3 going on right now, and they're all coming from our volunteer base. So to be able to scale this out, something we've been doing for a really time and reach more families, again, fills my heart. And then we have, and I can't see it, which is our online support meetings. So we've been doing this for a really long time. They used to be once a week for many, many years, and we offered it to the families that came to us through the peer coaching. When COVID happened, we said, you know what? How many families are not getting to the support meetings? So now this is being offered 4 or 5 times a week, heavily attended, and just been really a wonderful resource. Again, I'll speak to that waterfall effect. So many people that are attending our online meetings are now signing up to be a coach because it's been so powerful for them, which is insane. I think we have 5 online support families that joined us to know that there's other options based on our model to say, I need to be a parent coach. And we're training them right now, which is really wonderful. So enough on our services, and I'm probably talking too much, so feel free to interrupt. I spoke to this before. We have all those direct services that I just spoke about, but then we also have our content. If we think about the treatment system, if we think about parity, medication-assisted therapy, that's where the meat comes in. The treatment ebook, it doesn't speak to not only the different options that we have, because so often families just think, oh, we'll go to rehab, but what are the different, what is treatment? Could it be outpatient treatment? Could it be cognitive behavior? Could it be just therapy? So often we're thrown into that, it has to be that 60-day treatment. And then more importantly, how can we educate our families to ask the right questions? So often we look for treatment and we find a treatment center, and I'm not being negative here, it's just the truth. And we're connected to an outreach person that almost seems like one of our parent coaches, and that they're scripted. And for families, that feels like, wow, this is the first time that really someone understands me. They totally understand what I'm going through, and they love me and they care about me. And then there's that 50,000, here you have to put down 25,000 to get into treatment. When you start to travel this journey, you realize this is not that parent coach, but that outreach. So that treatment ebook helps families ask the right questions, right? What is your evidence-based science? What do you offer family programs? What does it look like when you get out of treatment? Is there a continuum care plan for your loved one? Medication assisted treatment. We really break down the barriers here. There's so many families think that it's one substance replacing another. And again, we'll tie in our legislation here. What are the laws? I mean, how, so often many treatment centers don't offer a medication or treatment system. We educate you that it's a right, it's the law. This I could go on and on and on about. There's hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content and content in ebooks. Again, here, more areas where we can help. Continuing care guide. I mean, so many parents, and I think we can all agree with this, those that have been on the journey, we think they've been to treatment and like, okay, everything's better. And we think of it as this big sprint when we, and now we know it's a marathon, right? So what does that continuum care guide look like? What can we do as families to be part of that, right? Are we living out our own dreams, or we're like, all right, now they can go back to school and they can do this and they do that, and our expectations are so high? And also, what is that continuum care? Does it have wraparound supports? What does it look like if they're going back to college or a recovery high school? So we teach you about those wraparound supports. I already spoke to these others, but I really wanted to comment about that continuum care guides, because we see thousands of families coming to us, and whether it be through the helpline or coaching, like, oh, my son's been to treatment and everything is fixed now. There's so much more than that. There are so many programs and educational programs and funding that need to drive that continuum care, because what we have experienced, and I'm thinking many of you, that treatment is just that first step. It's stepping out into that real world and taking the tools that we hope they offered in treatment, and for us to share those wraparound supports with them. One of the many other areas that we work in, I wasn't going to delve too deep into this because Courtney covered this last week, but our advocacy. It's another area that we work strongly on. I just put a couple of quotes in here of some of our parent coaches. But policy change, we truly believe that stories and data drive those results and changing policy. It's why our merger and the two cultures coming together to take that data from Center on Addiction together with our work with families has really been our kind of like our sweet spot, or our magic mix. This is our advocacy toolkit. I don't know if it's going to work from here, and that's another link that we'll share with you, but it shares with you the many ways, whether you're in recovery, whether you're a family member, regardless of the pathway into the work that we do, how you can help. And sometimes that might be supporting legislation, sometimes that's sharing your stories, and sharing your stories could be just sharing maybe that story of hope, or maybe sharing the hurdles that you faced. We get requests from the media every day, specific requests. Can you give me somebody in the Northeast area that's in recovery, but they use medication-assisted therapy and they relapse 3 times? And through our gathering of stories, it's how we can help them share in the media some of our the anecdotal pieces of addiction. And it's also how we change policy. I recognize some of you on here, we've been on the Hill together many, many times sharing our stories. And we know that that's how we change hearts and matters. It's not this statistic that we throw up on and say, and I shouldn't say that, let me back up. It is that statistical part of it, of the enormous amount of lives that we lost, which is tragic. But to connect that to a personal story, so often we talk about those statistics, but our policy people, whether in the Congress or Senate, don't hear about what that journey looks like that 7-year journey, 12 denials. And we think of the addiction recovery, again, our policymakers think it's okay, they got into treatment and it's done. They don't think of this chutes and ladders of, okay, they're in recovery and then they struggled again, and then they're back up this roller coaster and back. And that's part of the journey. So it's our opportunity to share not only the hurdles that we face, which we can advocate for, which is quality treatment, medication-assisted therapy, the list goes on there, but also to really humanize substance use and addiction, and it's how we change hearts and minds. So that's going to be another. I know if I share this, Kathy, you can tell me right away if this is going to work. And I don't know, you know what, I don't even want to chance it because I go off, but it's a wonderful advocacy toolkit that we just finished. We were funded by Hilton. It's just amazing.
Denise, I'll pull it up on my end, so at the end when you're done, I can bring it up.
And And the reason why I wanted to share it is because too often we think of advocacy as policy, right? And we don't think of the family members and how they can get involved. So it could be the low lifts of just retweeting, being a social ambassador, social media ambassador. It could be sharing action alerts that we really, for our constituents, just join each other, whether it be our family legislation, which just passed the House, which is ridiculous because it was like a dream come true, just to write the legislation, but to see it pass the energy and commerce and get markups, and it was just passed in the House, and now it's going to sit in the Senate with 256 other bills. But who would thought we would ever have a family legislation act, right? That spoke to the need for funding for family support, and more importantly, the need for supporting funding at the local grassroots level. If we know anything about advocacy, it's at the federal level, it trickles down to the state level. And unfortunately, and I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer here, it gets to a single state agencies, it's typically to the same 6 people all the time, and not to those local grassroots organizations that are doing the great work supporting families. So while we know this might not be passed in the Senate real soon with the 256 other bills, we couldn't even imagine it passing the House. So just really wonderful work being done. And let me go down here. And again, I'm going to revert back to that. So how do we empower families to advocate? Personal stories. We will be starting a new page with just anybody who wants to share their stories, whether it's stories of hope or memorials. But then we also have another option where we kind of hold your hand and help you write it or pen this story. What were the hurdles that you face, so that when we do get back to some normalcy, God bless, and we're back on the Hill, we could have these specific stories that help to change policy. And our goal in the last year was to have an advocate in every congressional district. I will say we have an advocate in every state, and we are almost close to every district, right? So again, these are goals that we set a couple years ago, and maybe we were a little aggressive, but we've reached them. We'll be coming out with our heat map that will not only share the different congressional districts that we're in, but also where we have back to, I want to just go back to this slide here because it's really important. And I think it speaks so much to the organization that we are, of where we collaborate. So will it have our congressional districts? Yes. Where there's stories shared, how many coaches we have across the country. We have a new, and I will share that with Kathy again, a community partners network, which is also free. But we want to highlight those grassroots organizations doing wonderful work at the local level and highlight the great work that we're doing. We have a family support roundtable where we work with these organizations. We are members of this organization and the convener. We are not, we're not here to say, hey, we're, partnership to end addiction. Here's what we want to do. We're listening to them. They really drive the content that we do. And we can't do this alone without our community partners. So
and with the advocacy, I just want to add in how important that is with across the congressional districts, like with the Family Support Services for Addiction Act, just knowing which bipartisan, making that bipartisan legislation, knowing who to have, in what district to come in and be able to go talk to those legislators that in their area that were more likely to sign on with that act. So just having that is so amazing.
And just to get where we were, like it was like just that dream, right? And it will pass the Senate. There's no doubt about it. As we all know, there's a lot of stuff going on around now, plus legislation. But when things settle down, the fact that we, got it to Energy and Commerce, it was immediately marked up, passed through the House. We're just like, let's just say I cried, let's just take the worst case scenario and it didn't pass through the Senate in the future months, which won't be. Who would have thought we were talking about family legislation? Who would have been thought that families were part of the solution? And it's exactly what we need, that steady funding stream. Too often, again, we're thought of as part of the problem with the treatment centers. I will be a Debbie Downer. There's no support there. A lot of it is because of the funding, and there's no steady funding and no billing codes to help those families. But a lot of it is that just revolving door. Sorry, just being honest. My story is the same as so many other families. We have exhausted our 401k plan. Our college funds have second and third mortgaged our houses. At the end of the day, we're blessed. Our son's 6 years in recovery, but it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that you have to, you can't even take a loan out to get like a Snapple at the corner store. But at the same time, and Kathy, you know this more than anybody, I mean, how blessed are we, right? We're the lucky ones. But your family
Absolutely.
and so many others are the ones that inspire us and to keep on pushing forward on advocacy and content and educating families. So I want to personally throw that out because it's families like you that just fill our gas tank every day, and why we give voice to this. So I'll end there, and we appreciate you. So when I say end there, I'm not like hopping off, but I'm not like a PowerPoint person. I love Q&A. I hope there's some questions. And I'm going to take it off my notes because I'm like starting to be a Zoom expert, but totally not a PowerPoint and Zoom expert. And when you get my age, you kind of need like notes at the bottom to kind of stay on track. But so any questions or anything I can answer, that would be great.